Nation's Libby Dean is live at the White House. Libby, I've been watching your reporting all night long. What are you hearing from the Trump administration at this hour? And good morning.
Good morning to you, Hena. I mean, this was a massive attack, and it's ongoing and could last days, given what we heard from the president there in those comments. But in that 8-minute video, he repeats again and again that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. That is at the center of all of this. And you'll remember those negotiations that have happened over the last month about the nuclear weapon and the nuclear program in Iran. But there are several other objectives that the president was laying out here about overall just weakening the regime there in Iran. First, he talked about annihilating the Navy, also Iran's proxy groups in the region. And that is going to be key, is to watch how those proxy groups respond, not only in the hours, but the days ahead as this continues to play out there on the ground and in the region. The president also trying to make the case to the American people by laying out the history of the relationship of Iran, of course, with the U.S. and Israel over decades. We know this was a U.S. and Israel joint operation that took place. We want those details, though, of who targeted what, whether that was military infrastructure that was the U.S. was targeting, and the leadership in Iran, Khamenei, of course, being the key there for Israel, and who was doing what is going to be the big question there. But I mentioned that case that the president is going to make to the American people. He also mentioned in this remarks that we heard from him that U.S. service members could be injured, saying, quote, that often happens in war. That is going to be very interesting and concerning to watch over the days ahead because, of course, we want to keep our U.S. service members in our thoughts as this all plays out overseas. But President Trump's message to the people there, 8.5 minutes long, or just over 8 minutes long. And what we've known in the days leading up to this, Hena, I mean, all of the pieces were in place here. It was just a matter of when and if the president was going to move and utilize all those military assets that have been built up over the last several months. That's, of course, the U.S. Gerald R. Ford, the Abraham Lincoln, who are sitting off the various coasts there. And we're ready there. If President Trump wanted to move, we continued to hear from the White House, Hena, multiple times throughout the last couple of weeks that all options were on the table here. And then we saw the USS Gerald R. Ford actually arrive in the region, and then just a day after that, we saw this all play out. It's very interesting to also just talk about the negotiations and all of this. President Trump started the day yesterday afternoon when he was leaving for Texas from the White House. He said he was not happy with how these negotiations were going with Iran. And I had actually heard from sources inside the room there when these negotiations were playing out between Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and, of course, those Omanis who were doing these negotiations on behalf of the Iranians. And they said they were disappointed with how things were initially going. And I think that was the key sign here, was those initial reports of the disappointment from the U.S. side. And then you hear President Trump say, you know what, I'm not happy. And then all seems to be pretty normal yesterday. The president traveled down to Texas and then, of course, now is in Florida, Hena.
We just showed a graphic of Iran confirming the targets: Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE. There's that graphic. So we know Iran is retaliating with their own missiles and drones, Libby. We heard from the president overnight. Do we expect to hear from him throughout the day?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Hena, President Trump, he is not here at the White House right now. I mean, it's incredibly quiet. No one is here right now. He's down in Florida. So this next update, the potential that we could get what the results of the initial operation. Of course, you mentioned that's been dubbed Epic Fury, Operation Epic Fury. So we're going to want the operational details of when the president gave this the green light, and then what this looked like behind the scenes, because there is the potential this looked similar to the operation in Venezuela, a makeshift war room that we saw down at Mar-a-Lago. Those are kind of the details we're going to want. And then, of course, what actually took place on the ground in Iran and what the next days ahead look like here, because that's very unclear at this point, Hena.
All right, Libby Dean, live at the White House. I know you're on top of it. We will check in with you throughout the morning.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.